Hi, and welcome to our Rhetoric 1060 Week 2 video. Um, one of the big things about Rhetoric 1060, one of the end tickets we want you to walk away with, is an understanding of APA. APA is the American Psychological Association, and it's not just for psychology majors, it's for most of the science majors as well. And it is not too dissimilar from MLA. You'll see in the PowerPoint, the font sizes, the margins, that's all the same. A couple of main differences with APA, and I'm going to go through a little bit of it, but the formatting is, there's a whole video on how to format your paper. You can also click on APA formatting on your Word information, and it can format it somewhat for you, but you shouldn't wholly rely on it because it doesn't do the reference page correctly. So one of the big differences between MLA and APA is that there's a title page. There's always a title page for an APA paper. Now that it's all online, you're not wasting so much paper, but you'll see it just basically has, the title of the paper, your name, the name of your university you're attending, and the date that the paper is due. The other difference, another big difference between MLA and APA, is the abstract that is required for every paper in this class, and it is an APA requirement. You can always ask your teachers when you're in a class, how they feel about it. Do they want an abstract for this paper or not? You don't want to lose points for not doing it, but you're going to learn how to do one here. I will say that there is a really in-depth discussion about abstracts in week 4. So I'm not going to do too much about the abstract here because there's so much other information to cover. But it is on its own page. It says abstract at the top. It is a summary of your research, and you actually talk about what your hypothesis was, what your solution was. It's all in third person. So that's a very unusual thing. So if I was writing the paper, I would say Rivard Warnberger studied 12 people for this source. I surveyed 42 different sources, that type of thing. So you would use your last name and not your first name. That's another thing about APA. APA is very gender neutral. So one of their big things that they pushed for in APA is that people, prejudge sometimes, like, how could you know about that topic? Or that person, couldn't possibly know as much as a opposite gender person. And that's, of course, patently unfair and unrealistic and not true at all. But it is very gender non-specific in APA writing, and very specifically in the abstract and in the reference page. So you have your abstract, and again, I'm going to talk about that in great detail in week 4. Then in your body of your paper, it starts on the next page. You do have a title centered. There still will be headings on your paper, which will have the title of your paper instead of your last name. For MLA, it'll have the title of the paper and the page number. And then you will put in, again, the title of your paper. Again, it's kind of odd, centered in the middle there. And then you start off typing. Don't forget you need to have indentations still. And the citations are slightly different. You'll go through the whole body of the paper. You'll be using in-text citations. My expectations we'll be talking about with the paraphrase summary work, but that you will introduce it. John Smith in his article, Studying Bronies, stated blank, and you have it in quotes, and then you cite it. Another big difference in APA is in the parenthetical citation. Instead of having the author's last name and the page number or paragraph number, they have the year. So APA is more concerned with the year. So like I said, it was scientific. A lot of scientific backgrounds use APA, nursing and biology, anything scientific, mechanics, engineering. They actually use the year because they care about the recency of the information. So for example, if you're writing a paper about open heart surgery, you don't want to include something from 1966. But in MLA, it didn't matter because it was really about the author. So they're more English related, like English majors, and they care about who the author is, and then the page number, because it's irrelevant about Shakespeare's when it was written. They just want to know who it was written by. But in APA, they want to know when. So you need the year and the parenthetical citation and the paragraph or page number if you've mentioned the author already in the introduction, which is my expectation. So you go through the whole body, you do your citations, everything else is regularly formatted. We're not going to be using any academic subheadings in this particular paper, the first paper, so I'm not going to talk about that till we get to it. I try not to overwhelm you with too much, but you'll do that, and then you have your reference. So remember, your works cited in MLA is called the references. In APA, and it's capital R, and then it's just references, and you underline it. This is another thing that is part of, and I'll show you in a minute on our PowerPoint, it's part of our gender non-specificity, is that you only use the last name and then the author's first initial. So for MLA, you spelled out their whole name. For APA, you do not. You just put their first initial. So I'm going to show you a little portion of the PowerPoint. We're just going to dip through it really quickly, but it is available to you. And this is not the last time I'll be talking about APA as well. Any questions you have, certainly let me know. So as I share my screen here, I'm going to let you see, this is the PowerPoint for APA. And basically, a couple things I wanted to point out. If you have a short quote, which is what most of you should use, it's fewer than 40 words, then you just go ahead and put it in with quote marks in the citation. And here's an example of it. My expectation will be that you would introduce it. Mealy, in his article, blah, 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 stated approximately 27% of the workforce displays poor emotional intelligence. Then you have the year, and in this case, the page number. So with longer quotes, you have over 40 words, and you should be very, very careful about how many of these you use. For the most part, there's almost no reason to use that big of a quote, where you can use ellipsis and take out words, or you can use brackets and add in things you need to add. But this is how it would look if you did use it. Use the author's last name, put the year in parentheses, you kind of do your introductory statement, a colon, and then you put your quote in there with it not being in quotes because it's indented. And then you put a period and you put the page number. And that's how you work a block quote. Then I'm just giving you some examples, things from the internet, what you have to have in there, the internet source, the document title. So in here they have the person introduced, the year. Remember, I said the year is the most important, and then the paragraph number. And they show the in-text citations looking like this. If you have 2 or more people, you can use the ampersand instead of the word and. You can use chapters. You can use the paragraph number instead of the paragraph, the word P-A-R-A. That's perfectly fine. Or you can use it the whole word. But as you see, the year is the most important. As I said, the reference page is at the end. You want to double space everything in this entire paper. So you double space the title page, the abstract, the entire paper, and the reference page. So no question, always double space everything. Make sure that when you are putting your references, it's just like MLA, where the first line is flush left and the rest of it is hanging indented. And if you have any questions about how to do hanging indentation, there's a million videos on that. And once you learn how to do it, it's super easy and you never have to look it up again. Here's an example of some references. You've got it alphabetized. So just like MLA, it's alphabetized. You have the last name, first initial, like I said, no names, no first names. We don't know if this is, Denise or Daniel, and that's the way they want to keep it. So your last name, first initial, period, the year, because that's the most important to them after they can see who wrote it, period. And then you have in the complete source. The next one is Isaac is the last name, G, here's the year, then we have the rest of the citation. I don't go terribly into, I'm not going to quiz you on citations because it's really irrelevant until you actually start doing it yourself. And you'll find for the first paper, because it's by the same author, 3 different sources by the same author, it's a different citation that's not even included in their normal information here. So I'll be including that in our class that week when you're putting together your reference page. But you can clip through all these if you want to. I strongly suggest you reference the OWL at Purdue, OWL at Purdue. That is the online writing lab. And they have the full APA and MLA latest information that you can get there. So that's certainly a good place to check out. They have no author. You start with the title, just like MLA. If it's electronically received, you have to kind of put in the information of the website. They used to use DOIs, but they don't use that anymore. That's part of the reason why I don't require you to buy a book for APA, because they're changing it up all the time. They'll change really random little things like you only need one period after each sentence, and then you have to buy the whole new book to tell you just a few little things. So I'll just tell you those. We will be using newspaper articles, so I wanted you to look at this. It is going to be electronic versions of newspaper articles. So in this case, unlike any other citation, you're going to use the year and the date. So I'll be expecting this on your reference page for the first paper. So there's a lot of different interesting things in the APA PowerPoint, and you really should look at it. It will be very helpful to you. And I will keep talking about APA as we go along and as I look at your work that you're handing in this week. You do have a plagiarism tutorial due that if you've already done it for another class, all you have to do is put your badge in that area and you'll get 100 points. The paraphrase, summary, and quotation is something that is due this week that I'd like you to take a look at. So if you look at the paraphrase, summary, and quotation exercise, I want you to kind of understand how it's laid out. So I have the summary in there, and I explain what a summary is. It's really you reading the entire book, the entire article, anything in completion, and then putting it in your own words, like as if you were explaining it to someone, like, oh, I read this great article, here is what it was about. So you don't have a ton of details in there. You wouldn't have like how many people they interviewed or what people they were quoting or talking about or what sources they used. You would just be talking about really, this is what the article in the shortest amount of things I can tell you. And sometimes the article title is the best thing you can use for that. It'll help you kind of understand what it is they're talking about. A paraphrase, unlike a summary, is only a couple sentences from the entire work. So you look at a couple different sentences and you say, okay, these two sentences in my own word, these couple paragraphs, this one paragraph, if I was going to just restate that in my own words, but I don't want to put it in quotes because it would fit more smoothly in my paper, then you paraphrase. Then I give you an example of what the original passage that I practiced paraphrasing was from, and it has the citation in it. Then it shows the unacceptable paraphrase, and it's unacceptable if you look at it because the words are too close to what was originally there. So the first death row inmate, and they say the first death row convict. You can't just, in a paraphrase or summary, just take someone's words and rephrase them in your own words, but using their same words. You shouldn't just look up some synonyms for everything. You should really look at it, read it, and say in your own words, this is what it's about. You can certainly still talk about New York Times. That wouldn't be anything to copy. You can talk about, Senate Judiciary Committee. That can't be changed. The people's names like Kirk Bloodsworth and Kelly Green, you don't have to change those, obviously. But you are trying to sum it up in your own words, exactly what was in that sentence. So I'm expecting it should be introduced. And so this was also part of what's missing. This is how I want your work this week. And when you're doing your papers to look like this. In Kevin Semple's article in the New York Times titled Dawdling Over DNA, he informed readers. And so I'm telling you kind of an introduction. I've paraphrased it in my own words. It's cited. This A1 is from an actual newspaper. So this is a print edition of it. So it was on section A of the newspaper in page 1. So you're not going to use A in your paper because you're looking at it online and there is no section of the paper you're looking at. Then I provide an unacceptable summary. And again, the words are too close. Victim of a vicious assault If you look up here, they got the victim of a vicious 2004 assault. Showdown on the stalled, and they have it up here as a showdown on the long stalled bill. So don't use the same words. My best suggestion to you for summaries and paraphrases are actually to turn the entire sentence around. So look at it from the back to the front, and how could you state it? So, for example, if you said, unfortunately, too few senators showed up to make a quorum, you'd say there weren't enough votes because there weren't enough senators there. That would be a paraphrase. It's not in the same style as the author. It's not using the same words other than senators, which you can't really change. So that's kind of a quick example of how you could do that. So I show an unacceptable summary, an acceptable summary. If you look, I've introduced it by author and title. And then I have an unacceptable quote in there. Now, this is really important because I want to make sure that you understand. I'm not going to waste your time asking you to copy and paste a quote out of the article. That I think a third grader could do, or younger maybe even. What I want you to do is introduce it. So, in this case, it would be in Kevin Semple's article titled Dawdling Over DNA. I would state the quotation, then you would include the direct quote. You cannot change any words in the quotation unless you show an ellipsis that you took words out. So if you take words out of the quote, you can put an ellipsis in, and I show you an example of what that looks like. Or you put a bracket in, and I show you an example of that here, down here. A bracket means that you added your own words. So you can see from the example above how they were changed. So a quotation must be word for word. So if you're quoting something, and in this first paper you're going to be quoting everything, you need it to be word for word. Once you read through all of this assignment, then you're going to read this article by Charles Krauthammer. So this is the title of the article, Government by Regulation, Shush, and all the information when it was made. And then you read this article, and then you'll put a summary of the whole article. This is what the whole article was about, basically. Choose any 2 lines in there and just take 2 sentences and put them in your own word. They can be one after another. They can be 2 separate sentences. Please cite where you took them from, or you'll lose the points because you're supposed to be citing this. You're showing me that you can properly paraphrase, summarize, and quote. And then you're going to have a quote of 1 line. We'll have another Google Zoom Hangout on Thursday. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them as well, and before you have to turn this in. But this week, again, you'll have your APA stuff. You want to go over it because it's going to be part of this paper. Next week, our first worksheet is due. After that, 2-week worksheets are due. And then a week after that, the paper's due. So it does kind of creep up on you, and you want to make sure that you're getting some of the APA stuff. Again, I will talk about it a little bit more every time, but you got this. You're doing great. We're week 2 in. I've been enjoying looking at your introductions and getting to know you a little bit better. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions, and I hope you have just a wonderful, perfect day.